Hi, everybody. Welcome to another one of my game building tutorials in Greenfoot. Okay, so we all know that when we go to space, it's not necessarily the aliens that we have to worry about. Um, what is truly terrifying in space is the crayfish. So we're going to build a game here. We'll be a rocket. We'll be able to shoot. We'll be shooting aliens, and we'll have to be careful of. We'll have to dodge the crayfish because they can do us extreme damage. Okay, so let's get to it. So I've opened up Greenfoot here. I created myself a new Java scenario. Okay, I've called mine Killa Krayfysh, and let's go. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete my world. So I'm just going to delete that. I'm going to make a new world. Okay, I'm going to call it space. And I'm going to go to backgrounds. And I'm going to go and get a space background. So there's my background is set. Okay, now for my actors. Okay, I've done a bit of planning here already on paper, and I kind of know what actors I need. So the first actor I'm going to need is I'm going to need a rocket. Okay, so I'll call it Rocket Man. I'm going to go to transport. And down at the bottom here, we got a rocket with a fire at the back of it. So I'm going to pick that as my image for my rocket. Next thing I'm going to need is I'm going to need a bullet for my rocket to fire. So I'm just going to go call it bullet. I'm going to go to symbols. There's tons that you can choose here from, but I'm just going to pick this red dot. So that is going to be what I'm going to use for a bullet. You can obviously pick anything that you want. I'm then going to define a new subclass here as well, called enemies. Okay, enemies. This is going to be, although it's a subclass of actor, it's going to be a superclass of the various enemies, the alien and the crayfish. So I'm going to pick enemies with no image. Okay, so I've got no image for enemies. I'm just making them. Then I'm going to right-click on enemies, and I'm going to make a subclass under enemies, and that is going to be an alien. Okay, alien, I will just go to other, and I'm going to use this little green thing here. That's going to be my alien. Also under enemies, sorry, excuse me, I'm going to right click enemies, create a new subclass, and this is going to be my truly terrifying crayfish. And I'm going to go to animals, and I'm going to go down here in animals, and there it is there. Those are the things you've got to watch out for in space. So there's my crayfish. So you'll notice here that my alien, my crayfish, are a subclass of enemies, which in itself is a subclass of actor. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to need, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to right click down here in an empty area. I'm going to import a counter. Okay, so I'm going to import a counter because I need that for keeping my score. We've used this before in some of my previous videos, and you'll see again how we use it again. So the first object I'm going to go and build. Well, I'm going to open up space. I'm going to open them all up. Rocket Man, bullet, enemies, alien, crayfish. Okay, so I've got the code is open for all of them. I'm going to start here with Rocket Man. Okay, you can go and fill in the documentation here, the description, the author, and the version. Okay, I'm just going to just to try and keep the time down on the video. I'm not going to fill them all in, but you should be doing that. It's good programming form. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to declare my properties for the Rocket Man. Instance variables or properties, right? So I'm going to need an integer for the speed of the rocket. Okay, this is going to be the speed that the rocket moves on the screen. Okay, so I'm going to need speed. Before I continue, there's something I need to show you quickly. So I'm just going to go here to Explorer. So here's all my Greenfoot projects. Okay, this is a folder that I've got on my desktop that I keep my Greenfoot projects in. So if I go into my game, Killa Krayfysh, you'll see here that this is the source code that it's starting to build up. But I wanted to show you here. Okay, these are your resource folders. So here in images, here is all the images that I am using at the moment. So as I picked images for my actors, Greenfoot put these images, the ones that I needed, into this folder. Now you're going to notice that there's one image in here that's extra. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to pause the video soon and make this image for yourself. So basically we are going to animate the rocket. So I took this image, which was the standard image that came with Greenfoot. I opened it up in Paint 3D. You can use any graphics package, anything you want. It really does not matter. I opened it up and I erased the flame at the back. I just erased the flame at the back, and then I resaved it. I kept it as a PNG. So I've got rocket.png and I've got rocket2.png. So you'll want to make yourself another, let's say, frame that we're going to use for animating the rocket. We're going to flip between these two images, and that's going to make the rocket look like there's flame coming out of it. The other thing you want to do is, you'll notice that if you go to sound, I have downloaded a sound file here. Okay, so when we shoot bullets, I know in space you wouldn't be able to hear them, but in our game we can. So I downloaded a little bullet sound here, and you can get sounds if you go to, there's tons of places. Okay, here's one website called freesound.org. You can go there. I just typed in bullet, and you can see it gave me 434 sounds. These are all they are free for you to use. Okay, they're not licensed or anything. So they're as the name suggests, free sounds that you can use. So you can just come here and have a look and see, come and find yourself some sound files. Now you just got to be a little bit careful, because obviously in Greenfoot, if I go to Greenfoot Sounds, this is now the Greenfoot Bible, the API, your sound must be one of these file types. Okay, usually it's going to be one of these, a WAV file or an MP3. Okay, but you can also get AIFFs or AUs or MIDIs. I would normally pick one of these two here. So you will see that in mine, it's a WAV file, tiny files, baby file. It's like 3 or 4 kilobytes or something. Okay, so pause the video and make your alternate rocket image and get yourself a sound file. Just make sure you save it into the correct folder. Okay, it must go into your images are in images and your sounds are in sounds. Okay, so you've now got all the resources you need. So let's go ahead and do this. So we have declared a property there for speed. And now we're going to need some variables to control the animation. Okay, so we're going to go private. It's going to be another int. I'm just going to call it frame timer. And we need another private integers, and we're going to call it frame number. And we need another one, also an integer, and I'm going to call this one frame threshold. Right. Now, as we normally do with our objects, is we need a constructor. So we write our constructor here. So the constructor will be public, and then we know that being a constructor, there's no return type. So it doesn't say void or int or anything. Okay, it just says public, and then it must match this letter for letter. It must match the class name. So we're going to say Rocket Man. Okay, so there's our constructor. So the first thing we want to do is set our speed. So we're going to set the speed, and then the next thing we're going to do is we are going to set the frame timer. I'll explain to you what these will do for us. We'll just set it to 0, and we'll set the frame threshold to be equal to 10. And yes, I do realize I could have set these here. Okay, so I could have declared and set them here. It's either way. You can do it either way. Okay, I do realize you can do that. I just like to do them inside my constructor. So then I've got frame number equals 1, and then I'm going to say set image to rocket.png. Okay, so that's setting the initial image for my rocket. Remember, I've got 2 possible images. Okay, so frame number 1, okay, I've set the number 1. So frame number 1 is going to be rocket.png. Right. So now let's handle the animation. Okay, so I'm going to come down and we're going to write another little method here called animate. Okay, animates the rockets. Okay, so we're going to write a little method here that will do that for us. So we're going to say private, because it's private just to this object. It's void, it does not return anything to us. And it is animate, is its name. Right. If I just flip the rocket images, okay, so remember we're going to use the act method to do this, but that act method is running at 60 frames a second, usually. If we haven't changed the speed, it's about 60 frames a second. So if I flip this image every time there's a tick, okay, so every time the act method runs, if I flip this image, the rocket is going to animate so fast that we will not be able to see anything. Okay, we won't be able to see anything. So what we are going to do is we are going to flip the image every 10th tick. Okay, so we're going to let 10 ticks go past. So 10 ticks of the act will run before it flips. So we're going to sort of make ourselves a little timer here. Yes, I realize this is not the best way to do it. Okay, by rights we should be using your computer's timer. So we should be using the millisecond function in Java. But this is an instructional video. So we'll do not everything I do here is going to be the exact way you might have to do it. But I'm just showing you how to do stuff. So I'm going to show you how we can make our own timer. So we're going to say if, and we're going to say if the frame timer. Okay, so if the frame timer is greater than or equal to the frame threshold. Okay, and we set the frame threshold to 10 above. So if we have got 10 ticks or more, now we can flip the image. So we're going to say if the frame number, so if the current frame number is 2, okay, so if the current frame number is 2, then we want to set the image to be rocket.png, and we are going to set the frame number to be 1. Okay, so it's currently 2, so we're going to flip to image number 1 and set the frame number to 1. Otherwise, it obviously wasn't 2, so we can assume it was 1. So we can then set the image to be rocket2.png, and we're going to set the frame number to be equal to 2. Okay, so once we have done that, okay, we flip the image. the next thing we must do is, because a flip did take place, I must set my frame timer back to 0, because remember it's at 10 or more right now, so I'm going to set it back to 0. So if a flip takes place, I reset my timer back to 0 so that it can start counting back up towards 10. And then outside of this if, I'm going to increment my frame timer by 1. So this thing here, the animate, it will keep incrementing the frame timer, and if the frame timer has got to 10 or above, it will flip the image and reset back to 0. So I can come here into the act method, and I can run my animate. Okay, so we've got some code here for the rocket. So let's go back to the we'll go back to this the world. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the world, and let's drop a rocket onto the screen. Okay, so we're going to drop a rocket onto the screen, and let's just see if what we've got so far is working. So the first thing I'm going to do here is, as we usually do, I'm going to declare my variables, okay, or my properties for this particular object, instance variables. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to declare a variable of type rocketman. Okay, so I'm creating a rocketman variable, and now you can call it anything you like. Okay, I'm just going to call mine rocket, but you could have called yours George or Bill or anything you want. It's just a variable name, but it's of that type. Okay, so I've created myself a rocket. Well, I've created a variable to hold a rocket, and now you will know that what I usually do is I make a separate method for setting up my screen. Okay, sets up the initial display. I like to just keep that in a separate method. So I'm going to save private. It's a void. Okay, it doesn't return anything. It just does something, and let's make it do something. So the first thing I want to do is I'm just going to go back here quickly, and I'm going to make my screen bigger. Okay, so I'm going to make my screen 800 by 600, so because I want a slightly bigger playing area. And then I must also call my prepare here in the constructor for the world. I must call my prepare method, otherwise it's not going to execute. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, right, rocket equals, okay, remember up here I've declared the variable, but I haven't actually given it a value. So I'm going to say rocket equals new rocketman. Okay, so I'm now giving it a value. I've declared a new rocketman object, and now I'm going to add that object into the screen. Okay, so where am I going to put it? Well, I'm going to put it, what must I put in? So, okay, so I'm putting in the rocket. Okay, remember add object wants three variables. So what do I put in? Well, I'm putting in the rocket. And where am I going to put it? Well, I'm going to put it 50 pixels in from the left-hand edge. And I want to put it halfway down the screen. So let's get the height of the screen. Okay, remember get height is a method from the world class. It gives us the height of the screen, whatever that may be. So I'm going to take the height of it and divide it by 2. So I'm guaranteed now to be in the halfway down the screen. Okay, let's compile that. Let's run it. Okay, I'm just going to say new space. There we go. And if I run it, there's my animation. Okay, so my rocket is animating nicely, and it is on the screen. So the code we've written so far is good. Right, let's go back to the rocket. So now the next thing I want to do for my rocket is I want to be able to move it around on the screen. Okay, so I'm going to come under animate here. I'm going to make another method here called move rocket. Okay, moves the rocket. Probably pretty self-explanatory, and it's going to be a private void move rocket. Okay, so how I'm going to move my rocket is I'm going to use my up and down arrow keys. Okay, so the up and down arrow keys on my keyboard, that's what I'm going to use. Obviously, you can use anything else. A lot of people use W and S. I'm just going to use the up and down keys on my keyboard. So I'm going to say if, and now remember the Greenfoot class has that very handy is key down method. Okay, so I'm going to say Greenfoot dot is key down. Okay. Okay, and the key that we are looking for is going to be the up key. So I need to put in the brackets there. Which key am I looking for? I'm looking for the up key. Okay. Else if Greenfoot dot is key down. Now I'm looking for the down key. Okay, so if the up key is pressed, what do we want to happen? Well, we want to set the location. Okay, so we're going to use the set location method of the actor class. We want to set the location of the rocket to be somewhere else. So where do we want it to be? Well, we are going to keep the x. Okay, the x coordinate is going to remain exactly what it is. So we check the rocket, where are you now? And whatever the x is, we keep it. Okay, we're not moving it horizontally. We're moving the rocket vertically. Okay, and then we're going to say, okay, wherever you are now vertically, let's subtract speed. Okay, speed we defined up top here of 6. Okay, so it will be whatever its y value is minus 6. Okay, and likewise down below here for the down key, exactly the same. Okay, get x, we keep the x the same, but we are going to get y, but this time we are going to add speed. Okay, remember a bigger y goes down. Okay, so it's not it's not like a normal Cartesian coordinates. Okay, so we've got move rocket, that should move the rocket. Remember, I've got to go and put move rocket into the act method, otherwise it won't move. Okay, let's compile that. Let's go and run. And yes, my rocket will now move up and down. Brilliant. So now, okay, we've animated the rocket and we can move the rocket. So now what we want to deal with is, let's deal with shooting. So we're going to come back here. I'm going to go to the bullet class. Okay, so let's start writing some code for my bullet. Okay, you want to fill the descriptor in here. I'm not going to, just to save some time. So I'm just going to go here, and as we usually do, we are going to declare our properties or our instance variables. Okay, and for the bullet, I'm going to need a private int for the speed of the bullet. Okay, so I need for the speed of the bullet. Then, as we usually do, we write our constructor. Okay, so the constructor, right here, it's public. Okay, remember constructor is not void, no return type whatsoever, and it must match letter for letter the class name. Okay, so that bullet must be the same as this here. Okay, so public bullet, and I'm going to give my bullet a speed, let's say 5. And now I know from earlier experimentation, I know that the image that I'm using for this bullet, this red draft, is a little bit too big. Okay, the bullet is just, the image is too big. So I need to scale it down a bit. So I'll show you how to do that. That's quite handy. So I'm going to say Greenfoot image. Okay, I'm going to declare a new variable called img of type Greenfoot image. I'm doing it here inside the constructor. Okay, and I'm going to say get image. So the get image method of the actor class returns an image, okay, it returns a Greenfoot image type. So img will now be it'll be this red dot, okay, is now in img. IMG is now an object though, so I can now start using the methods that Greenfoot image class gives me. So I can say IMG, and it has a very handy method called scale. So this is going to allow me to take that image, whatever it is, and scale it to some other size. And for me, 15 by 15 is a good size. Okay, so I've scaled the image to a different size. Now I must write that scaled down version. I must write it back to my bullet. Okay, so it must use this new version of the image. Okay, so I got the image, changed its size, and then saved the image back. Now, I do this, I created this IMG inside the constructor because I know that under the rules of scoping, as soon as this constructor finishes, okay, as soon as the constructor is not running anymore, as soon as it completes, this IMG, the memory that we used for this, will be recovered. I don't need it anymore, okay, so I can safely let that variable die when bullet finishes running, okay, because I have saved the image back to my bullet. So I can safely let that die and just save that memory. Okay, so there we go. My bullet image is done. Now what I want to do is I need to move this bullet. Okay, I need to be able to move it. So I'm going to say, I'm going to make a new little method here called move bullet. Okay, we know what it's going to do, so I'm not going to bother typing it in there. So this will be a private method. It doesn't return anything. Move bullet. Right. So to move the bullet, we are just going to say set location. Okay, and we are going to set location. Now set location needs two parameters, again, X and a Y. Okay, so now I am moving the bullet horizontally. So the X value is going to change. So I'm going to say, right, wherever you are now, add speed on. Okay, so whatever distance we set speed to, it'll add that on, and whatever your Y value is, keep it. Okay, so we're not changing the Y value. So that will move the bullet horizontally to the right. Now, we need to remove the bullet when it gets to the edge of the screen. Otherwise, we're going to end up with thousands of bullets all packed up against the right-hand edge. So we need to be able to remove these objects when they get to the end of their useful life. So we're going to say, right, if we need to check where the bullet is. Okay, so if get X, so we're going to look at the X coordinate. Okay, if it is more than, we need to look for the right-hand edge of the screen now. So we're going to say get world, get width. Okay, so we're using the get width method of the world object. Okay, that's going to give us the maximum width of the screen. And I'm just going to subtract, let's say, 3 pixels off that. So as soon as my bullet gets within 3 pixels of the edge of the screen, okay, I want to kill that. I want to kill the bullet. So I'm going to say get world, and then just to give me a world object, and then I'm going to say remove object. Okay, the opposite of add object. So I'm going to say remove object. And which object am I going to remove? Okay, well, we've seen this before. It's this one, the one that has got to the edge of the world. That's the one that I want to remove. Okay, let's see if this works. Okay, in order to make it work, of course, I've got to go to the act method and put my move bullet in there. Okay, so I can construct a bullet. Okay, I can make my bullet. There it is. And as soon as I put it into the world, as soon as the bullet exists in the world, it will immediately start moving to the right, and it will die when it gets to the right-hand edge. Okay, so what we now need to do is we now need to go back to the rocket, because it's the rocket that's going to be shooting bullets. Okay, so that's what we want to do next, is we actually want to fire some bullets. So let's come down here, and we are going to say, we're going to create a new little method here called fire a bullet. Okay, so it'll be a private, it's void, it doesn't return anything, and it's called fire bullet. Okay, so I know in order to fire a bullet, okay, all I have to do is put it into the world. If I as soon as I create that object, it's going to start moving. Okay, and I'm going to use my space bar as to fire. So that'll be my trigger. So I'm going to say a Greenfoot dot is key down, and I'm looking this time for the space. Okay, so if I have pressed the space bar, then I'm going to say I want to add an object into the world. Okay, so I can't just say add object here, because remember, I'm currently an actor. Okay, so I can't just say add object. Add object is a world method. So I have to first get a world object. Now I can say add object. Okay, so I'm going to add object. Again, add object wants 3 parameters. The first thing is, what must it add? Well, it must add a new bullet. Okay, that's what you must run the constructor for the bullet. Okay, and where are we going to put it? Okay, remember, I'm currently the spacecraft. Well, I want to see where I am. Okay, I'm the spacecraft, and I want to shift the bullet. I want it to originate 50 pixels from the middle of the spacecraft. That's going to make the bullet look like it's coming out of the rocket's nose. Okay, if you don't do this, the bullet's going to look like it's coming out of the rocket's body. Okay, it'll still work. It just looks like it's coming from the wrong place. That's all. So this should work. Okay, so when I push the space bar, I'm going to get bullets coming out. Remember, I must come up here and I must put a fire bullet into my act method. Okay, so my act method is doing 3 things. It's animating the rocket, moving the rocket if I push keys, and firing the bullets. So let's compile that. Let's come back here. Let's run it. Let's see what we get. And yes, you can see I get thousands of bullets going out. As you can see how fast this thing is. Remember, it's firing a bullet 60 times a second. So I'm getting about 60 bullets a second here. So that's not a very good game. Obviously, that's just way too easy because I can just mow down the aliens. Okay, so we're going to make a small change to our game. What we're going to do is very similar to what we did for the animation. Okay, we're going to create a little timer, a little delay, and we're going to make sure that a certain number of ticks go past between the time I can fire, almost like a reload time. Okay, a lot of games have got like a reload time. Once you shot a bullet, you've got to wait for a little while before you can shoot again. We're going to do exactly the same thing here. So at the top of my code, I'm going to go and declare some more variables here, some more properties. So I'm going to have is an integer, and I'm going to create myself a bullet timer. Okay, here I had a frame timer. Now I'm going to create a bullet timer, and then I'm going to create another private, also an integer, and this will be called the bullet threshold. This is how fast the bullets will fire. Okay, the smaller you make this number, the smaller the timer needs to be, and the faster the bullets will shoot. So the bigger you make this number here, the more time you'll have to wait before you can shoot. Okay, so I'm going to say, I'm going to set the bullet timer. I'm just going to start it at 0. Okay, so I'm just going to give it an initial value, and the bullet threshold, I'm going to set that equal to 10. So it'll fire at 10 ticks, so you can't fire more than 6 times a second. Okay, that's provided you're moving at 60 times a second. Okay, so we have got a bullet timer and a bullet threshold. So now what we need to do is we now need to go and incorporate that down into our shooting code. So here I'm looking for when the for when the space bar is pressed. Okay, so let's just space that down a bit. So now what I need to do is I need to say, well, if the bullet timer, so if the bullet timer is greater than or equal to the bullet threshold, okay, so enough time has gone past, okay, so the timer is now above what the threshold is. Now I can actually, I'm just going to cut this from here and put it inside here. So now I can add my bullet. Okay, so I'm waiting for the bullet threshold to time out, and only then can I shoot. Okay, so once I've shot, then I must reset the bullet timer back to 0. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to show you, and then outside of here, okay, I'm going to say bullet timer plus plus. Okay, so that's going to be, that's what increment the timer. In fact, that goes in here, because we want the timer must increment even if we are not pushing the space bar. Okay, the timer must happen automatically. Let's tidy this up a bit here for you. Right, I'm going to show you another thing in here, is when I shoot. Okay, so whenever I shoot, so as soon as I've shot, I want to play a sound. I'm going to play that bullet wav sound that I had. So I'm going to say Greenfoot dot. Now this, remember we use this Greenfoot class, this utility class. We've been using it quite a bit. Get random number and all sorts of things are in there. Another handy one is play sound. Okay, so we are going to play a sound file, and it's going to look in that sound folder for it. Okay, and it's called bullet.wav. Just make sure the spelling exactly matches the spelling of the file that you've got. If you've got capital letters, put in capital letters. Okay, when I play my game, you're not going to be able to hear the bullet play, but believe me, I can hear it in my headphones, so you will hear yours as well. So I'm going to compile. Let's go back. Let's see if this runs. So now you can see I've got fewer bullets here now, right? Perfect. And you can make even fewer if you make that threshold bigger. Perfect. So my rocket is doing everything I wanted to do. My bullet is doing everything I wanted to do. The last thing I want to do in this video now is I just want to show you, we're just going to set up the score. Okay, so I'm going to go up, I'm in my space, in my world again. So I'm going to go and create my score there. So I'm going to say private counter, and we'll just call it score. Okay, so I've set myself up the variable to hold my score. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and place it on the screen. Okay, so I'm just going to make some space here in the prepare. So I'm going to say score equals new counter, and what I want the counter to say. Okay, so the constructor for counter, you can go and have a look at it. It's overloaded, so there's a couple of different constructors for it, and one of them allows you to put a string in, and that string is what it displays. And then I'm going to say score dot, because remember score is an object now, so I've got access to the setters and getters inside of the counter, and that set value is a setter, allows me to set the value for the counter. And then I'm going to add object. I'm going to put the counter on the screen. Okay, so add object is a world, so I don't have to put anything in front of it. And what I'm going to put on the screen, well, it's going to be the score object. And where am I going to put it? Well, I'm going to put it 50 pixels in from the right and 20 pixels down from the top. Okay, I've previously measured, and those look good. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to write myself another little method just underneath here called add score. Okay, and we will cover this in the next video. as to why I've done this. I'm just going to do it here for now. Private, sorry, this is going to be public void add score, and inside here, okay, we are going to accept an integer. So let's just call it points if you want to, it doesn't matter, it's just a variable name. And then we're going to say score, which is my counter object, and I'm going to set its value. Okay, so what I'm going to set its value to, well, I'm going to check its current value using the getter. Okay, so I'm going to check its current value, and then I'm going to add points to it. So whatever was passed in here will get added to my score. Okay, so let's just compile this, make sure it all runs, come to run. You can see my scores on the screen now. I can shoot. Okay, so everything's working all right. I've got my animation going, my bullets are flying, my scores on the screen, everything's ready to rock and roll. We will continue on with the enemies. Okay, we'll continue on doing the enemies in part 2 of this video. So please come back again.